We were talking about the primaries and what learning points we took from the primaries, especially when it comes to security. And I was asking you about police officers who were compromised, lining with either side of the divide when it comes to aspirants.
Thank you, Debarl. First of all, during the election securities, we took an initiative to give all political parties liaison officers from police headquarters in our operations department. The liaison officers were supposed to coordinate with the political parties to ensure that they carry out a free and fair elections within their parties. And the liaison officers were supposed to make arrangements and support them in ensuring that they had enough officers to secure the votes, to secure their polling centers, and so on. But as usual, you realize that political parties have a feeling that primaries is their business. And they don't see us as a security for the country. They see you as a sitting government sometimes. They think maybe your presence interferes with what they want to do. And what happened is that many county commanders were calling us a day two on the days of election. They tell you, we have not seen the ballot papers. We don't know the returning officers and so on and so forth. And being their business, there is very little that we could probably have done. And you saw the way they carried out their elections. You saw the way they announced their results. And the objective of the police in getting involved in the primaries, we wanted political parties, each political party, to come up with the best candidates. What does that mean? That meant that if each political party comes up with the best candidates, then we are going to have a reasonable competition at the final election, where if you lose fairly, and you'll be able to greet your colleague and say, I've lost it. But you see, if by bad luck as a political party, you go ahead and bring weak candidates, because of maybe what you think that you perceive as loyalty or whatever it is, what will happen is that once you lose, you may not believe you have lost. And that would give us a lot of problems as a service, especially in the post-election, because you believe you have won an election, and yet maybe you have fronted very weak candidates. So it is to our interest as security agencies that political parties carry out free and fair nominations, bring their best candidates, let them compete fairly with others. And then we end up with a good election and move forward as a nation. Right. Because at the end of the day, you will blame us. Like now, I've just heard you saying that some police officers were compromised. It is to our interest, and that is why we have IPOA, the Oversight Authority, and we have the Internal Affairs Unit. I'm yet to hear of a loser coming to tell us that our officer colluded with another person. I don't know that where you got it from, but I don't think I've heard of any complaint at IPOA. And if there is any complaint, I think IPOA will deal with it at the level of an individual police officer. But at our level, we don't prefer any candidates.
Let's say from Morara, then we come to you, Professor Machira.
Yes, let me just say very quickly, one of the things we found very troubling monitoring the nominations is that there are things that continue bedeviling us. One is the way we do our politics. Our politics is largely driven by issues of ethnic mobilization, so that remains a very endemic thing. Number two, the political parties we have very low levels of internal democracy, and that have contributed to a lot of conflicts and tension. Number three is the state of preparations that all these political parties undertook ahead of the elections. We have a sense that none of them were actually adequately prepared. The issues that you've spoken about, the late opening of the polling stations, issues of open bribery. There were issues of leaflets being circulated threatening certain people to move from certain regions in the country. And therefore, these issues still remain unaddressed. Another component that is coming out very clearly is, and I think Captain Wanderi mentioned this, is our socialization. I think as a country, we've learned to normalize the abnormal. We think that doing politics violently is normal. And oftentimes this comes as a result of those ones who are the perpetrators of these kinds of violence and electoral malpractices not suffering any consequences. In the whole process, we saw all those things going on, violence, people being intimidated, hurt. Very few were arrested and arraigned in our courts of law, save for the case of Bishop Wanderi. And this is not to say that overall we didn't have cases of massive electoral malpractice across the board. But Debarl, I think this is just a teaser. As a commission, we are putting together a final report that we'll hope to launch in the course of this, the coming week. But then we'll look at how we were able to analyze a whole raft of issues in the 30 counties that we sent monitors to. We have about 84 monitors on the ground. But the way the parties conducted the nomination leaves a lot to be desired. And quickly on that, for me, one of the biggest challenges we had for the parties is that none of them, how can you call yourself a political party when you don't have an authentic, recognized register of your members? And then you go out there, then you say you are conducting an election and all this. So most of them were forced to rely on the 2013 IEBC register, which brings me closely, as I make the final comment, to what Dr. Apollos was saying. The issue of the register, because what is going to mitigate cases of insecurity in the country are actually the preparations and perceptions of fairness by the actors. So the IEBC, and I think the religious leaders a few days ago, called for the IEBC to move with speed and give us a final, cleaned up, principal register. We don't want to go to the elections the same way we've conducted the party nominations, whereby the parties didn't have an authentic register. IEBC cannot afford to take us to an election without a final principal register, and that needs to be done.
Thank you. Dr. Machira?
I think just to inform Charles, there was a lot of collusion with some incumbents and the police. And that is why in Laikipia County today, the cases of the governor is not resolved yet, because the police heavily interfered with the elections, escorting, marking, making sure that other people are left out. And the matter is still in court. So we still do not know who is our governor because of that, because they went through the Jubilee Tribunal, Political Parties Tribunal. Now they're in the High Court because of the police. And we know them. We know them by names. They were even supervising the counting of the votes, intimidating the voters class and the returning officers. Even the photographs are there. You can actually see them. You can see, and we know them by name. But I think maybe you'll come to know that. So if that kind of interference continues within the general election, then there will be chaos.
All right.
That is a point. Now, coming back to the elections, I don't think we are prepared, because right now, as I sit here as a panelist, I cannot know how many presidents are running. And if I don't know who, does my mother know whether they Dida, Nasim, Uhuru? I don't know. If now I do not know how many commissioners we have. I know Wafula Chebukati. I don't know the other commissioners. Previously, I used to know Letangura. Now, what is happening? Why are these commissioners in IEBC so secretive? Who are they? And what are they cooking? So for me, if they are not prepared, can we go to March 4th next year, where we finish 5 years? Because there is no need of rushing and getting into the problems that we got during the nomination.
But we know that the crisis that will actually throw the country into, especially when it comes to the Constitution.
But what Constitution? The Constitution, we made it. We can also remake if it will bring us into a lot of tension.
But you're just saying because it seems it's such an easy-peasy thing to do. Yeah, just tweak it and move on with life. But it takes a lot of exercise and funding, of course, from the government as well. But let's hear from, before we come to, let's hear from Captain Wanderi on this. Deployment of police, it can be intimidating, especially now when they're overseeing the counting of the votes as well, as has been seen. And we've reported here also from this particular media house as well that the police have been involved in some of these practices as well.
Debarl, one thing that we need to run away from as a country is this bashing of our own institutions. The police are not, they are a reflection of our own society. They come from our children, they are our brothers, sisters, and cousins, and whoever. They are part of us. And we need not, at every point, it is what we have. That is the institution we have at the moment. And we need first to have a self-belief that we can have the right people. We need to run away from that culture of always bashing every institution that we have. Let us first have a self-belief and say, yes, overall, generally, do we have a good police institution? Obviously, there are rogues within the police institution, and that is why they have institutions within the Internal Affairs Unit within the National Police Service and IPOA, which is a statutory body to deal with those issues. But then let's go further to the kind of things that Dr. Machira is talking about. You see, why would the police officers be involved in that? There is obviously one thing you need to know. The issue there is corruption. And it has, we talked about this last week, that as long as we have people who fund the political parties, who decide what materials go there, who offer transport, then that will happen. Because if the people, you've talked here, Morara, that the parties have no register, so that means they are not, you cannot talk of who are members and members who subscribe. Where are these parties getting the funding? And let us even dissect this further. How many parties are we talking about? There are between 50 and 60 registered political parties in Kenya. But we are only talking of nomination for virtually 3 parties. We are talking of the ruling coalition and the main party in the opposition. Okay? And perhaps another party in the opposition. There were no nominations for virtually other parties. They were simply dishing out certificates. And if we have a challenge with only 2 or 3 major political parties, what does that tell us? It tells us that as a country, this belief which we have entrenched in this country, that our politics, to create influence in politics in Kenya and then to translate that into power, you must create a situation of insecurity and violence. That is what we've seen. Because as much as we are talking here and thinking that political parties are worried about violence, in fact, politicians are happy when there is tension and insecurity because it means they are popular. They consider that as popularity. If you would be worried, for example, if there are parties that were just dishing out certificates because nobody wanted to contest. There were no contestants in those parties. But the parties with contestants, contrary to what we may be saying here, those parties seem to enjoy that kind of publicity, whether negative or positive. Mm-hmm. And that is a problem we have to deal with as a country.
Professor Midamba.
But there is a requirement in any democracy, and mature democracy is a good example for us. There has to be law and order, not jungle law. And the examples that Wanderi is giving is that people creating parties the last minute in order to run. They're self-centered party. They're not societal big goals for what's going to happen to us. So there need to be a very clear demarcation between what a political party is all about and what individual interest is. And we have to establish this as a country, leave alone this time we are going to have election, but the next election that follow in order to have law and order. There is a trend here, and I can clearly say the young people are going to be very active in this election. I can say a number of my students are out. They either been elected or they contested, and they are studying and understanding these people. So those guys who are out ditching out money to people, shame on you, because a number of you are going to be defeated. It doesn't matter whether you run with the helicopter or ditch out money. We need to know what you stand for the country. We need to know the big plan. And these 18 to 35 years are going to vote, and they are going to vote in a large number, and they will remove these people. So 2 things that need to happen. IEBC, the police department, and all instrument to peace has to be credible. They have to be seen as credible, not partisan, and not part of the group and everything. And we as a country must do everything to believe in this institution. Because if we don't believe in it, then we just believe in the law of the jungle. And this kind of thing will happen consistently for years to come. Let us take example of Ghana, that just after many years, just set up an example of order in the general election.
All right, thank you.
I think, Debarl, I've listened to Dr. Machira carefully. He looks jittery a bit. I think his friend maybe has not yet gotten his certificate or the candidate. I know all of us.
Don't go there.
I know all of us have interests. Even the policeman, like me, may have an interest in a candidate. But what I can tell you is just what, you know, this, we must accept that the political parties do not have proper structures to carry out nominations. And even where you want to blame us, I would only say that in cases where we have extreme involvement of police in supporting an individual, it is always very important that you advise the people concerned. And more so like an area of interest, like KNCHR, where you have an interest, is you need to inform them to liaise with IPOA. This is an independent oversight authority. We will be able to deal with that particular police officer. But basically, you will agree with us that there were no structures. You cannot say who is the ward returning officer, who is the constituency returning officer. But for these elections we are going to this time, the IEBC has the ward returning officers, the constituency returning officers, the county returning officers, and the chairman himself as the lead person at the National Tallying Center. And that is why we are working together. And you can remember even in the party primaries, you could see the sitting governors and so on using their vehicles for, the county vehicles for campaign. I can assure you that come the election time, we are going to ensure that all government machinery, vehicles and equipment are kept safe to wait for the next person to take over those offices and to be used by the public. We have our government vehicle check unit that will be out there. But we were going to face a lot of problems if we got fully involved in the primaries. Because especially, and I can say this, especially the opposition would have a problem with us. They would think we are infiltrating into their parties with an intention of favoring the sitting government, which is not true. And yet our duty is simply to provide security. And I can also assure you that the kind of person I sit with every day in the name of Inspector General, he looks cool, he looks diplomatic, but he has given us very strict instructions that we have to follow. And I can only ask political parties and Kenyans, campaign peacefully, go and ask people to vote you, just a minute, and ensure every candidate to ensure that he convinces his supporters to vote for him. I'm a policeman, but I know this race is very close. And the person who will win will be that person who will be able to convince his supporters to turn out in large numbers and vote. Ours is to secure, and I've assured you, we are going to secure ballot papers, we are going to secure polling stations, and for your information, we will be present at the counting centers from the ward. Don't expect us to be outside while you are stealing votes inside. We will not do that. We will be right inside the polling centers. We will be sitting there. We will be watching what each and every person is doing. And if you make a mistake, you try to steal even one vote, tutakuweka cell, and we will charge you. So I want to assure Kenyans that we are prepared. Don't be jittery. Don't be worried. Wait for the day.
All right.
Wait for the nominations to start.
But we want to see what sort of security measures we've taken so far when we are looking at potential or potentially vulnerable areas that have been mapped out by the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, first of all, and of course also in light of the capacity of a police service. But because we know so far that it's only, I think, 2 weeks ago, or 2 months ago, that the president said now we've actually reached that particular requirement by the United Nations of one person or one police officers to around 400 citizens in the country. Yes. But in terms of preparation, the potential risk areas that we have in this country, what is your plan?
Number one.
And which particular areas are we talking about? And why has the public not been alerted on the risks or the potential hotspots in this country, so that we be aware when we see police are being deployed, we don't see this as intimidation?
I think the campaign period is just starting officially from 28th of May. And we have said that, first of all, we are going to have meetings at county levels and constituency levels with all candidates, so that we can be able to brief them on what we expect out of them in planning for their campaigns. Nobody's just going to move out to campaign without a campaign plan and without informing the police on where they want to go, because we don't want conflicts. But what I want you to know is that apart from other institutions mapping out high-risk areas, through the multi-agency involving NIS and ourselves, what has happened is that we don't see much problem with the runoff on the presidential elections. What we are seeing much problems is where we call machinani, the MCS level, not even the MP and the governor's level. For your information, in the previous elections, there are regions that once primaries were carried out, we would be rest assured that we know who is going to win election in that place. According to our intelligence reports and our mapping, this is not going to be the case.
Yes.
And I'm strongly saying this. It is unfortunate that some people may not look at me as a policeman. They may start looking at me from my ethnic background. And I'm saying this, for example, in relation to an area like Nyanza province region, where always we had known once somebody has won nominations, then most likely we will project who will win. But we are seeing a situation where there's going to be very high competition, especially on the governor's positions. And it is not going to be business as usual. And for that reason, as a service, we are going to put a lot of effort in managing these governors who are going to run, especially on issues of violence. People trying to fight on clanism, people trying to fight based on party, saying you are not supporting us, and so on and so forth. And I can assure you that our deployment has been arranged in such a way that we'll be able to have a very good system of managing the elections.
Thank you.
More so, there's the issue of carrying of lethal weapons, pangas and so on and so forth. If you are an individual and you have one panga and you are walking alone, there would be no much problem. But if you are a crowd, 3, 4, 5 people, or you are driving and in your boot we get pangas, because we will stop people at random. We'll be very strict because we have also a legacy. We have a country to move forward. And I can assure you that through our training and our arrangements, it's not going to be business as usual. But we are prepared. The ward level, the governor's level is going to be very hotly contested. I know the presidential level will only bring tension at the level now that we are finalizing on the tallying.
Thank you.
Where I know.
Thank you. Yeah,
Debarl.
Yeah, just a moment.
Do you know? Do you know? Let me tell you.
No, I need to control the session because
yes, the sport.
I want him to respond to this also.
Yes, because he has a question for you.
Yes. I think, Debarl, let's not forget. Let's not paint a perfect rosy picture. We've seen what happens when we paint that kind of a picture. We saw it with one of the parties where their Secretary General kept on telling us everything is going to be perfect. We have everything in place, nothing is going to go wrong. And then come nomination day, we all know what happened. Yes. But let's draw very vital lessons from 2013. And I want the Charles Owino to take note of this. there were issues. After 2013, the police actually came up with a report to do an audit of how they thought they conducted the elections, which I think was a good thing to do. It was a good self-assessment. But in 2013, what Debarl is asking, the issue of identifying the hotspots and making sure that they are secure, I don't think we did very well. And I can give an example of the coastal region. The coastal region where the MRC menace. In that MRC menace, even some police officers lost their lives. It's not that something that we didn't know. We knew about that already. But the way it was handled wasn't very proactive. Then in the whole of the Tana River, the conflict from 2011, 2010, and all this, the net effect of that was that about a lot of Kenyans were disenfranchised in that region. Only about 65% turned out to vote. Now, as we speak, Debarl, and I want to mention this very quickly, there is another area in this country, actually, that we are not focusing or paying much attention to, and this is the North Rift. Dr. Apollo, you've spoken about Laikipia. Even during nominations, there were tensions there, people being killed, people being evicted from their farms, the ranchers and the large land-scale owners there. In the North Rift, as we speak, Baringo and all this, that's a conflict zone. So we may focus so much on the polling station, focus so much on making sure that the materials are there. But in terms of looking at the whole country and ensuring that we actually put in place measures, the police have a lot of work to do.
I think, let me answer you,
yes.
Morara. In 2013, I'm the one who addressed the international press conference, hours to elections, together with the then chairman. And I said that we were aware that people were planning to attack us. And he will tell you, as a security expert, that as much as you plan and you are aware that there would be a conflict, the mode of that conflict may not be as you have planned or as it has happened. And it is true we lost officers. But if we were not proactive, we could have even have lost more, or there could have not been any election. The fact that people lost their lives does not mean that we totally failed. The issue of North Rift, if you look at the conflict in Laikipia and Baringo, this is a conflict that is brought about by fighting for resources, water and pasture. That was the major reason why we had a problem in Laikipia, where individuals were coming to raid ranches, private ranches and conservancies. But a bit of it, yes, but a bit of it also has something to do with an individual politician looking for space and trying to incite people. And we have managed that particular politician. And we will put a lot of effort on that. The time we are coming for an election is not going to be a time when we are going to be fighting for pasture and water. August is not a period that we have those problems. But I may also not have enough time to sit here and tell you this is a hotspot, this is a hotspot. We have mapped the whole country, and we are going to use our level best to ensure that we secure the country.
Thank you. All right, before we come to you, Captain Wanderi, let's just hear also from our callers who are hanging on the line. And we have Dixon also calling from KNCHR. Good morning, Dixon.
Morning, Debarl.
Morning to you. You have a question or a contribution for our panelists this morning?
I have a question to the panel.
Yes, please. Kindly keep it brief, sir.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Debarl have a very big problem within our institution. Every time you give us this song that we should sing that let's respect our institution. I want to pick one of which is the point of discussion today, the register of political parties.
Yes.
We were not supposed to go to do even primaries without the register.
Yes.
Register of political parties is the custodian of the register of members of a particular political party. Do they have that in the register? Why did they allow political parties even to conduct primaries without a register? And why is it that now they are clearing independent candidates left and center? We are heading to a very bad situation because of our institution, which we are being told every now and then to respect. To the IEBC, they are supposed to give us audited register. Are they doing that one in an openness? Kenyans are watching. Let Mr. Owino come with the might of South Korea, tell him where Park is, tell him to come with the might of the Libya. I don't know where Gaddafi is. Sometimes people's power will never be stopped.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dixon from KNCHR. Also, we have Titus hanging on the line. Good morning, Titus from Eldamaravin. All right, Titus, can I hear myself from your television? Kindly just lower the volume of your television so that we can hear you clearly. Good morning, Titus.
Yes, good morning.
We have a question or contribution?
Peter from Midamba.
Yes, you have a question or contribution for our panelists this morning.
I want to ask this question.
Yes. Yes, go on.
Hello?
Yeah, Titus, kindly just lower the volume on your television. Don't listen yourself from the television. Just lower it. All right, let's also take Shalom, who's hanging on the line as well. Good morning, Shalom.
Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Morning, Joe.
Yeah, you have a question or contribution for our panelists this morning?
I have a contribution for that.
Kindly, briefly.
So I'm Sharon.
Okay.
Sharon from TI.
All right.
So I hope we have to learn from yesterday and live for today and hope. And I agree with Professor. It is our time as young and approaching youth. We have been learning and verifying our data.
Yes.
And now I can agree with Professor. It's time for our chance. We're going to change the country. We're going to change the country. It's our time. We have to stand still and fight for what is right.
All right. I'm afraid, Shalom, we can hardly hear you. I think the reception is not very clear. But also we have tweets from some of your viewers as well. We have Ernest Odeni saying Machira is very right. If you're not ready for elections, we better postpone and not get into problems. Also, we do have John Gidanga saying that IBC is not adequately prepared to conduct a free and fair election. Chebukati is on a helter-skelter mode to beat the deadline. Of course, they're stopped for time as well. He continues to say that beside vices such as corruption, tribalism and nepotism, impunity is becoming a trendy culture that is destroying our moral fabric. And Kajwang Otieno is saying, let Owino be honest. We come from Mashinani. The major problem is presidential one, right? And those are some of the tweets that we can see here. We'll be giving you much more of them in the course of a program as well. But let's just respond to what our callers are saying. And before we did that also, taking the callers, we warn you. Yes. You can respond also to some of the sentiments from our callers.
One, I think, yes, when the caller from Baringo says, Damaravin, talks about political, the registrar of political parties as an institution. The registrar of political parties may be the institution who has the custodian of the registry of political parties and the members, but the registrar of political parties also depends on the information provided to that office by the political parties themselves. And without getting into this issue, we know that there are reasons why political parties are not very keen to keep a register of members. First, we've said is a question of subscription by the citizens themselves to those political parties. Secondly, is that Professor hinted here that we use political parties as need be. It's just like anything else. It's just a vehicle we use for electoral politics, and after that we throw it away. It's not based on ideology. Perhaps we should thank one of the major opposition parties which has survived for more than 10 years. That seems to have a semblance of a party that could have a register. On the other hand, we have the audit that is going on, being conducted by KPMG on behalf of IBC, which is an international audit firm. Again, that is not something that IBC is doing themselves. They have contracted an international firm with a firm with an international repute to do that. So we better wait, and the best we can do is actually ask them to speed up. But we all understand why there is a delay, because of the litigation that was there. And now that the litigation is over, then we can talk about it. But let me say something. Debarl, security is not something you can say. It has no weight. It has no measure. You can't use the metric measures to measure security. It's a perception. And security much more depends on what the citizens themselves and the people who are consumers of that service think as to whether they are safe or not. If you were coming to the city of Nairobi at 5 o'clock in the morning within the CBD, you're seeing people getting into town and doing their business. That means they perceive that within the certain part of the CBD they can get in. But when it comes to elections, I want to disagree with one of the persons who's tweeted that the problem is not Mashinani. Actually, the problem is Mashinani. And although Mr. Owino did not say it, there are 22 counties that have been mapped, 22 counties that have been mapped as possible centers of violence, including some counties which are known to be non-traditional violence areas in central Kenya and western Kenya, as well as the former Nyanza province. Because of the there is both intra-ethnic and inter-ethnic competition on the governor's seat as well as the seat for the MCA and MPs. So those 22 counties, and they are mapped. There are some are in the northern Kenya, others are in the North Rift. We have some in the Mount Kenya or Central Kenya region, and we have some in Western and Nyanza. And perhaps they may want not to tell us the strategies they have in terms of deployment of their resources, because again, you do not want again to give that publicly. But the fact that he alluded to that, which point you didn't pick, that there are other institutions and other agencies that are mapping out, and that has been done. 22 of them were even mentioned by NCIC and other bodies.
And we'd love to know, because also Chekai Musa is asking, which criteria did police use in zoning up hotspots in areas? This must be rejected, he says, but we want to know which criteria did you use, because he says some of these places that they are part of hotspots list are not known to be places that are, you know, hot flushes or hot points or any man of insecurity when it comes to maybe elections as well.
Debarl, I have one question.
For us?
Yes, a general issue. You know, sometimes we demand too much or unnecessary, because the security of this country is entrusted, the internal security of this country is entrusted on police. And you don't expect police to go out there and keep telling you all the reasons. I think before I mentioned the province where I was born, the region, I said that the perception, we limit ourselves on issues of perception that may be there amongst people, in the sense that you find that you restrict yourselves to telling people exactly what you know. I would not want to get into details and start telling you what I know about certain areas, because again, people may take it that we are having preference, and it may be the reality. In this case, when somebody is asking how the police came about establishing hotspots, I think that question has no basis at all. For example, he was talking about Laikipia. It's common knowledge, you know what happened in Laikipia. When you are talking about Migori as a county, you could see in the primaries how many pangas and what we were collecting and people who were cut. You don't need to question. You don't need to question that. When you talk about Tana River, you talk about Mombasa, you talk about Laikipia. He just had a problem in his county. Such like issues raised by him are some of the things that lead you into knowing, mapping up. And when I talk about Mashinani, when I'm not concerned about the presidential race as a main issue, and why I'm talking about Mashinani, all these results will originate from a polling center. All these results will originate from Mashinani, even the one which will go up. So what will happen is that once we close the polling stations, each polling center, I'm sure within 2 hours or 3 hours, we shall have known what an MCA has gotten, what an MP has gotten, and even what the president has gotten in that place. What remains is tallying. So where the competition lies is Mashinani, not Nairobi. Not where the final tally will be counted. Okay,
because we are strapped for time, we have now to be out of studio. Just very briefly, and this is just thrown to every one of us. You can chime in. First of all, when it comes to election materials, because if the integrity of the system itself is very key when it comes to security, and election materials also, we've known from before that even BVR kits have been stolen from police station, where it's meant to be, you know, a very secure place, heightened security. We don't really understand that Al-Shabaab will come and steal BVR kits, as it was alluded to. We want to know how secure are these election materials that we anticipate that will be used during the August 2017 general election. And secondly, what about the security of the personnel of the election body? In this case, we're talking about IBC itself. Is it within the remit of a police service, or whose concern is it, first of all? Let's just also chime in as we're giving also our headline thoughts before we come to Charles to close. Let's hear from Professor, very briefly.
Debarl, I heard the other day from a credible source that there is a constituency who had all the information of who was registered in their constituency, and they questioned a number of people who were not supposed to be in that register. The issue is, as we move forward from now, we need to begin ourselves, the people of Kenya, to have credibility over our institutional structure. The police is far away from reform from where we need it to be. But we have to believe that the police is serving the interest of every Kenyan. We have to believe that IEBC is not perfect, but they're beginning to present credibility which Kenya need. So we need to begin to believe them. Otherwise, we will not believe in anything, and all is going to be chaos in the future.
Thank you.
For me, I think the IEBC must earn our trust. That is the minimum that we can ask from them. And that trust can come about by the kind of preparation they do ahead of the elections. We don't want to see cases of massive technology failure, as was the case in 2013. Late openings, as we've witnessed in the nominations. We don't want to see cases of a register that we don't even know what is the final register now. So we want to have one final principal register. I hope KPMG will proceed with speed with the IEBC and give us the final register, because as I'm speaking, we don't know the final number. The 19 million and all this, that is just a provisional and it's not been cleaned. Two last points I want to make is that even as we move to the next elections, for the police, one of the issues in 2013 was the issue of equipment. So I hope that this time round, the police officers have sufficient communication equipment. In 2013, some of them were forced to use their cell phones because they didn't have sufficient equipment. And also there was a problem of even their pay and allowances. So if the police are to go back in 2013 and look at 2017 as going to be a replica of that, their morale may be so low and they may not be able to conduct a fair election. Finally, free, credible, peaceful elections are really, as you say, about perceptions, and they are all about the state of preparedness that we have as a country.
Right. Dr. Machira.
I would request the IEBC now to start firm and ensure free, fair, transparent elections. Let the election day be on daylight. Let us not have darkness. Let the movement from the constituency from polling stations to the tallying centers be transparent, be during the day.
Thank you.
So let the IEBC staff be disciplined.
Thank
you. Because some of them are low staff.
Right. Let's hear from Captain Wanderi.
Yeah, Debarl, I'll be different because my focus is on the voter. The voters in this republic and citizens of this nation must know this, that the most important thing or the most important resource a country has is an informed voter and loyal citizens. That's the most important resource that we have. The election is not about the candidates. It's not about the people they support. It's not about the people who are competing for power. The election is about us, the voters. It is our election. It is us to determine who leads us and who gets the instruments of power and governance over our country. Therefore, we must focus on ourselves, conduct ourselves in a manner that behoves us to get the best of the raft of the candidates that have presented themselves.
Right. Charles, very briefly.
First of all, I would want to tell Kenyans that we are credible enough We have a large force. Remember, in the last 4 years, we have recruited 40,000 more police officers. We have been recruiting 10,000 police officers every year, and the government has put a lot of resources. We have equally gotten more vehicles. Over 2,000 vehicles have been given to us on higher basis. And even the issue of fuel, the vehicles are drawing fuel using a card. There's no limitation of fuel. And therefore, Morara, when it comes to equipment, numbers, we are set. We are fully set. What I would like to tell Kenyans is that we are your policemen. We are your brothers. We are the people you have entrusted with security in this country. We are not going to import policemen from Rwanda or Uganda to come and manage our country.
Thank you.
It is important that you have trust on us. And what I can say, judges come August this year after the elections. Don't judge us on your imaginations. But what I will tell Kenyans, stop bickering, stop negative politicking, go vote for the candidate you love and get the best man that you want for your country, instead of blaming us.
Or a woman.
Thank you.